It's fascinating, isn't it, how sometimes the things we once misunderstood can begin to shift. And as they shift, so too does everything else. Because it's not that they didn't love you. It's just they loved you in the only way they knew how. And as you think about that now, it's amazing to realise that we're doing the best with the tools that we had at the time, no matter how imperfect those tools may have been. And maybe, just maybe, you've already begun to see how their love wasn't about the perfection of their actions, but the purity of their intentions. And when you really stop to think about it, when you let yourself feel it become so clear, their mistakes, their missteps, their flaws were never about you. In fact, those imperfections, they simply showed they were human, just like us. And isn't it empowering to notice the way they fell short doesn't define who you are? Because who you are is so much more than any unmet need or unspoken word. You're whole, you're resilient. You're someone who can now look back and say, they cared in the only way they knew how. And as you begin to realise that deeply now, imagine what it feels like to notice something new. They may not have shown you love in the way that you wanted, but they still showed you love in the way they could. And when you truly begin to recognise that, you might notice a sense of warmth growing inside, a deep, steady understanding that this was never about whether you were worthy of love. It was about their ability to express it in a way you understood. Because isn't it interesting how people are shaped by their own pasts, their own limitations, and yet, despite all that, they still tried. And the fact that they tried, even if they didn't succeed in every moment, can now remind you of something very important, that love doesn't have to be perfect to be real. And as this realization settles deeper, you might find yourself wondering, what does this mean for me? Well, it means that who you are today is someone who was and always has been loved, even in the moments you couldn't see it, even in the ways that felt unclear. And the more you feel that truth now, the more it begins to grow, strengthening something within you. It's like planting a seed, isn't it? That seed of understanding, that seed of self-worth, that seed of knowing deep down that you were cared for in ways you didn't even realize at the time. And as that seed grows, so does something else, a belief in yourself. And it's funny, because the more you allow that belief to take root, the more you notice how free you begin to feel. Free to let go of all doubts, free to release all judgments, free to simply be. And as you step into that freedom now, you might even begin to feel a sense of lightness, a sense of play. Like a child rediscovering the simple joy of just being alive. And isn't that what it's all about? To have fun, to laugh, to relax, into the truth of who you are. Because who you are, it's someone who's enough, someone who's worthy, someone who's always been worthy. And as you let that truth settle in now, deep into your mind, deep into your heart, it's like a wave of calm begins to wash over you. Because you're learning to see it now, aren't you? That your past doesn't define you. That their mistakes don't define you. That even their limitations don't define you. What defines you is the strength that you've carried forward, the love you've learned to recognize, and the belief that you have in yourself. And as this belief continues to grow day by day, moment by moment, imagine now how it feels to know that you're loved, that you're enough, that you're free to simply be yourself, fully, completely, beautifully, authentically yourself. Because after all, isn't it true that every step you've taken, every lesson you've learned, it's brought you here to this moment, and in this moment you're safe, you're whole, you're enough. And as you feel the truth of this settle in, like a comforting embrace, you might find yourself smiling as you realize how much lighter you've become, how much freer you feel, how much more love, joy and confidence is now flowing into your life. And the best part, this feeling, this understanding, this belief, it's something you can carry with you always, because it's always a part of you. It's who you've always been. So let it grow, let it expand, let it guide you, as you step forward now into a life that feels lighter, brighter, and so much more of your own. And isn't it fascinating how the mind, your mind, can begin to notice things now that maybe it didn't see before? Because you might already be starting to realise that every experience, no matter how imperfect, carries within it a lesson, a gift. And when you look back on those moments from a new perspective, you begin to see something you hadn't seen before, don't you? Because the truth is, love, it doesn't always come wrapped in the package we expect. Sometimes it's subtle, hidden beneath layers of action or inaction. That might seem confusing at first glance, but just because something isn't obvious doesn't mean it isn't real. As you think about this now, you might wonder, how often do people do the best they can with what they know? You see, everyone is working within the boundaries of their own world, shaped by their own past, their own belief, their own limitations, and sometimes the way they express love. It's simply the only way that they know how. Just as a bird sings the song it was born to sing. Your parents expressed their care in the language they understood, and whether or not that language met your needs perfectly, their intention, their effort was real. So now you might begin to realise, even though it wasn't perfect, even though they made mistakes, those mistakes didn't define their love. And they certainly don't define you. Because what defines you is who you are now. The strength that you've gained, the clarity you're beginning to see. It's like looking at a painting, isn't it? At first, you might only notice the flaws, the brush strokes, that seem uneven, the colours that don't quite match. But when you step back, when you see the whole picture, you begin to notice the beauty, the effort, the intention. And isn't it freeing to realise that their love, though imperfect, was always there? And as you begin to see this now deeply, it's as if something within you starts to shift. Because the moment you recognise their positive intentions, no matter how flawed the execution, you begin to let go of the old weight, that old misunderstanding. It begins to dissolve, doesn't it? And in this place, something new starts to grow. You see, this is the magic of perspective. When you change the way you see things, the things you see begin to change. And maybe now you're starting to notice how much lighter you feel, how much freer you're simply being. Because the truth is, no one comes with a manual. Your parents didn't have a perfect guidebook on how to show you love or to meet every need. They were navigating their own challenges, their own fears, their own limitations, and yet still they tried. Isn't that something? That despite everything they tried. And isn't it amazing to realise now that their effort, their intention, was never about whether you deserved love. It was about the only way they knew how to give it. And as this understanding settles in deeply now, you might begin to notice how much stronger you feel. Because when you see that their limitations were never a reflection of your own worth, it becomes so clear, doesn't it, that you've always been enough. And maybe now, as you think about this, you begin to feel something else growing inside. A sense of compassion, not just for them, but for yourself. Because you've carried this for so long, haven't you? And yet, as you let it go now, you might notice how much space it creates. Space for joy, space for play. Space for a new belief that you've always deserved to feel love exactly as you are. Isn't it empowering to realise you don't have to wait for anyone else to meet your needs anymore? Because now you can meet them yourself. And as you do, you might find yourself discovering something beautiful. The more you care for yourself, the more you begin to see how much you've actually been cared for. It's like turning on a light in a dark room. Suddenly everything looks different. And as that light grows brighter, you begin to see yourself more clearly. As someone who's worthy, someone who's loved, someone who's free to live life fully, without the weight of all misunderstandings holding you back. And the beautiful thing is, this shift happens naturally, because deep down, your unconscious mind, it already knows this truth, doesn't it? It's simply remembering it now, bringing it to the surface in a way that feels easy, effortless, and right. And as you continue to let this truth settle in, you might begin to notice how much more playful you feel, how much more relaxed, It's like rediscovering a part of yourself that was always there, waiting for you to remember. Because isn't that what it's all about? Letting go of what no longer serves you, so you can step fully into who you've always been. And who you've always been is someone who's whole, someone who's worthy, someone who's enough. And the more you feel this now, the more you might notice how natural it is to let go of all doubts, all fears, all beliefs that no longer serve you. Because you're not defined by the past. You're defined by what you choose to believe now. And right now, you're choosing to believe something new. That you're loved, that you're worthy, that you're free to live, to laugh, to love, to be in a way that feels right for you. And isn't it exciting to realise that this belief, this feeling, this truth, is something that grows stronger every day. With every breath, every step, every moment, you're stepping into a version of yourself that feels lighter, brighter, and so much more of your own. Because the past, it doesn't define you. What defines you is the love to choose to recognise now. The love you feel for yourself. The love you've always deserved. So let that grow, let it expand, let it guide you forward into a life that feels freer, fuller, and more joyful than ever before.